Hi, my name is Mrs. Overish, and I'm so glad you're here to learn with me today. We have been talking about force and motion, and today we're going to talk about changing shapes and how that affects the way things move and the amount of force it takes to change a shape. We have been reading in our story called Force and Motion. This is a non-fiction book, so that means it's going to teach us real information. Our story is by Clint Twist. In a non-fiction book, I can open up to any page I want and read the information. I don't have to read it from beginning to end like I do a fiction story. Our title of this page is called Changing Shape. Force doesn't just make things move. Force can also change the shape of some objects. The more force you use, the more shape will change. You can push and pull dough into shapes with your hands. So small force equals shape changes a little. What do you think? When you push your finger gently against a piece of clay, you can change its shape a little. What will happen to the shape of the clay if you push it with more force? So if I'm just using my finger to push into the clay a little bit, it might leave a small dot or hole in the clay. But what if I use a lot of force on the clay? That means I push down on it really hard. Maybe it's on the table and I smash it down. Is the clay gonna stay in its little ball, or is its shape gonna change? Its shape will change and it'll probably flatten out because you push it down so hard with all that force. Today, we're gonna talk about what it means to change the shape of something and how that changes the way it moves. Today, we're gonna use paper and change the shape of our paper to see if I can get the paper to move different lengths. When I look at my paper, I have just a flat, normal piece of white computer paper, but I want my piece of paper to go all the way to the other side of the room. So let's see if I can change its shape to see how it's gonna change the way it moves. So when we're gonna do our first one where I'm not gonna change the shape at all, I'm gonna leave it just like this. Do we think the paper is gonna move far? Is it gonna stay close to me? Let's see what happens. I'm gonna try and throw my flat piece of paper. I didn't use a ton of force to move my paper, but my paper didn't go very far at all. It kind of just landed right in front of me. What do you think happens if I make the paper smaller? I can change its shape by making it smaller. I can make my paper smaller by just tearing it in half. Do you think this smaller piece of paper is gonna move farther, about the same, or maybe even closer to me? Let's see, I'm gonna use the same amount of force to throw. That was about the same. So changing the size of it maybe didn't help. What if I take my paper and I fold it? Do you think that will help make the paper move any differently? Maybe I want to fold it in half and fold it in half again. Now my paper is a little bit smaller, but I didn't get rid of any of it. I just folded it up to make it smaller. Let's see if I use that same amount of force, how far my paper is gonna go. Remember, I want it to go all the way across the room. Let's see what happens. It didn't go any farther than the ones that were just plain and flat. I wonder if it being flat is what's keeping it from going very far. How can I change the shape of my paper so that it's no longer flat? What can I do to my paper to make it look no longer like a flat piece of computer paper? What could I do? What if I crumbled the paper up into a ball? So now I've been able to crumble up my paper. I used a lot of force to be able to change the shape of my paper and put it into a ball. If I use that same amount of force to throw it, do we think it's gonna go farther than our flat pieces or stay about the same? Let's see what happens when I throw the round, crushed up piece of paper. Wow, that went really far. It flew all the way across. Why do we think that crumbled up piece of paper went farther than some of our flat pieces? When I changed the shape of my paper, I changed the way it moved. And I used force and motion on my end to be able to make my paper look differently. What are some other ways that I could make my paper move far, just like we did with the ball? What if I made a paper airplane? Have you ever made a paper airplane before? Can fold it in half. So instead of crumbling my paper, I'm folding it into a specific shape. Fold one point down to make a point at the front. And fold it across to make some wings. Sometimes paper airplanes can move really far. Sometimes paper airplanes don't go very far. Depends on how you build them. Here's my paper airplane. It's a pretty simple one. Do we think that this paper airplane is going to fly as far as the ball? Or do you think it's going to stay about the same as the ones that were flat? Because there are some flat pieces on this paper, just like the ones that are on the floor in front of me. Let's see what happens. I'm going to use about the same amount of force to throw the paper. Wow, that flew all the way over by the ball. So it flew just like the ball did. Why do we think both of those were able to fly in a specific direction when these just kind of fell in front of me? Those had a nice shape to them that shows motion that goes fast. So our ball and our paper airplane are able to move really smoothly through the air to make a fast motion of paper. I want you to ask for a couple pieces of paper from an adult at home and try this activity yourself. What are some other ways that you can make your paper move really far? Were you able to crumble up the ball and throw it really hard across the room? Maybe ask an adult to help you make a paper airplane. Maybe you can come up with a different way to change the shape of this paper to get the paper to move farther than I did. Thank you so much for coming and talking with me today about force and motion and changing the shape of something and how that changes its motion. My name is Mrs. Overish, and I'll see you next time.